All right, what's up everyone? This is Don with Third Creative, and this is the walkthrough tutorial video for static multi-sport Photoshop template. In this video, I am going to walk you through all of the layers, the processes, and hopefully cover anything and everything that you might need to know in order to create the best images possible with this design. I really like this design, and I'll probably say that about all of them, but this one just seems to really pop. I like it a lot, and one thing that I really like about it is the option to make these double images. The athletes really seem to love them, and I think they make good social media images and good banner images. But of course you can roll with a single pose and they look great too. You can kind of see here left and right we've got light and bright, and we've got dark and moody on the right. You can make something bold and vivid like you have here with bright saturated colors, or you can do a little more washed out sepia like you see here. You really have all kinds of options and possibilities creatively with this, and I try to make several sample images to convey what some of those possibilities are. But as we work our way through the layers and I'm explaining everything, I'll probably come back to these images and reference a few things just to demonstrate or give you a visual of what I'm talking about. But let's jump into it. I will say one tip, a normal tip that I always give is to go through and click on these little eyeballs and see what everything is, just see where it's hiding, and it just helps you get familiar with where to find things. Of course, I try to label them very thoroughly and accurately, so you can always read what's here. But I find that it helps. After making several sample images and actually using the template, I would say one tip is to start off with your subject folder. If you open it up, you're going to find a subfolder in here, and I'll explain what's going on with all of this here in a little bit. But drop your subject in right here above this layer. You can turn off the sample subject, but if you get a subject in there, I just find that it's really helpful to customize your template if you have the visual of the athlete in there already, the uniform colors, the lighting. It just really helps. So that's my number one tip. Let's go all the way to the bottom like we always do and work our way up. Consistently, the first layer at the bottom is usually change background color, and it is in this one as well. So very simple. This will be pretty thorough. I'm going to explain even how to open your color picker box by double clicking on this little icon here. You get your color picker up. You can sample a layer. You can sample within here or within your image as well to get a starting point. Find a color that you like. Now you're probably noticing that this looks terrible, so let me explain the next layer. Actually, let's go ahead and stick with one of these colors. Let's go really dark, something like that. Okay, so the reason it looks bad is because the next layer, if I open up the smart object, is this grunge texture, and it's kind of serves as a border around the edges, and it has a color overlay, and that color overlay is set to this color right here. So it looks great on white, but on this dark navy blue it does not, and so we would want to kind of do the same thing. Sample within here, or on or you can just hand pick it with the slider like this. But general rule of thumb is if you have a really light colored background on this first layer, you want to go a little bit darker with the grunge texture so that it shows up. If your background color leans a little more to the dark side, then you want to go a little bit lighter with the grunge so that it shows up. But basically it gives the appearance of some grungy texture. Now if you want, you could do something really extreme and do contrasting colors. It might start to look a little busy, but I think there are some scenarios where that might look good. In fact, if you look at this background, this navy and this red, coincidentally, that may have looked good with this, you notice their sleeves, it's a gradient that transitions from red to navy. So you never know, you can really play around with it and come up with some cool things. But that's why it looks like that, so don't be alarmed. Changing the color, very simple, clicking the word color overlay. So let's get this back to white so that doesn't drive me crazy. There we go. Next we have our grunge layers. Says change color. So basically if I turn that off, you see all of those little grunge, colored grunge marks, those bold ones, those prominent ones, they're all in this folder. If I open it up, you'll see I left them all separate. Leaving them all separate does allow you to go in there, turn some on, turn some off, make some bigger, move them around, rotate them, whatever you want to do. In fact, if you want to make them different colors, you can even do that. Now by default, it's set up so that you only have to change the color on the folder itself. So if you look at the folder, it has a color overlay, click on it, open this up, we'll just go up to red, and it will blanket apply the color change to everything in there. If you're ambitious and you want to do them separately, turn off this color overlay, and then each independent layer has its own color overlay. Most people aren't probably going to want to do that, but the option is there. Next we have our exposure vignette. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bigger so we can see everything on here. It says it's optional, it's adjustable, excuse me. So it is optional, I can turn it off. If you want it to be a little brighter, turn it off. You know, it does brighten it up. As you notice, it kind of darkens the edges if you have it turned on. You can click on with your move tool. Well, I guess you don't even have to have the move tool. You can click on these anchors. I hold down Shift and Option, and you can bring it in a little tighter if you want it to be a little more prominent. You can also double click on this icon here to get your properties, and you can make it darker. So you can move it in, move it out, make it darker, make it lighter. You can play around with it and adjust it. So the default setting like this, if you go with a dark background, it's not going to show, you know, as much. And so you can kind of see here where I shrunk it in and I increased it so that it would be more prominent. So it just depends on how dark the background is, if you want to use it or not, or if you want to adjust it or not. But it can really help make your image more impactful if you do a little fine tuning. Next we have our upper and lower stripes. So they're really small, but at the bottom you see 3 stripes, at the top you see 3 stripes. If I turn it off, you can see they disappear, so you have the option to, that looks really nice. In fact, the original, I think I have it up here, it had no stripes. It was a little bit different, not drastically, but a little bit. So that may be an option to turn it off completely. If you want to change the color and you want all the stripes to be the same color, then you'll use the color overlay that is on the folder itself. Just like we've done several times already. Pick the color that you want just by double clicking the word color overlay and clicking in this box. Very simple. We don't want red, so we'll get rid of that. You'll notice in my sample images that a lot of instances I went with different colors outside versus the middle stripe. In most cases I did. A few I did not. So if you want to have them more than one color, you would just simply click on this eyeball here next to the word color overlay on the folder, open it up, and you have your left, middle, and right. And so you would just double click on the word color overlay, pick your color. It is a good idea to copy, right click copy, or Control Command C and copy the code. And that way you can just jump down here to the third or the right one and Control Command V to paste it in, and you have them exactly the same. And then the middle one you could make a different color if you want to. So that's how that works. I'm going to turn that back on, make them all blue. And this layer mask, if I turn it off, you can kind of see it's just 3 lines that go all the way through it, and this layer mask is what hides it. Next we have our text layers. Let's unpack that. So if I open it up, there's 2 subfolders. You've got your vertical side text layers. So you see on the side of this subject frame, you've got these layers, and it actually also includes this long, thin grunge layer on both sides. And I did that for a reason. So if I turn it off, you see all of that goes away. And you might decide you like a little bit cleaner image, and you might turn them off. But you might keep them, and everything is inside here. We'll get to that. Let's jump down to the bottom first. So the bottom, we have our lower text layers. So if I turn that off, turn it on, it does have an option to make them all the same color. So you would just turn that on if you want them all to be the same color, and you would just pick the color you want. Very simple. I think it's off by default. So if you want them to be a little bit different, you just open it up. And so a little bit to unpack here. We have 2 first name options. So the first one is this signature font, which I really like. To change the color, you can come up here to your properties, or if you're in your character, your contextual toolbar. If you double click, you've got it up here. All sorts of places that you can do that. Now I do find that this particular font option, it may not be as friendly to automation. You might have to move some things around if you want to use automation, and that's just because I think that it looks best if it's kind of right up against the name like this, where the first letter is capitalized. It's going to dip down, and so I think it looks best like that. So it could come up here, but then I don't think that looks good at all, and then of course you don't have room. So a more automation friendly option would be first name option 2, and this one is right oriented, so it's going to hold the right marker here and push it out to the left. So you can kind of see if I type in there, what it will do. So a couple options there. You can always scale them, move them, but otherwise just simply changing the color is very simple, just like everything else. Let's see, we'll turn this back on. Actually, let's go back. There we go. Last name, very simple. You can have these different colors. You can have them all the same. You could make the text size smaller or larger. You may need to make it smaller to allow for some larger names. But then we just have our subtext, which is our classifications. If you're using automation, you'll probably rename this layer and just use one of them. Otherwise, you can just turn off and on the one that you want. If you're changing the color, you could select all of them. If you select one, hold down Shift and select the top or the bottom one, depending on the direction you're going. Just get them all selected. It will allow you to change the color. If you have a code, you can paste it in. It'll apply to all of them at once. Pretty simple. This grunge texture is this layer mask. If I hold down Shift and click on it to disable it, you can see all of that goes away. You could click on this chain link here to unlock it. Let's hold down Shift and activate the layer mask, select the layer mask, and you can move it around. Now it's a lot more drastic like that. I kind of had it where it just looks good right in there, but you could scale it up, scale it down. Probably nothing that you'll want to do, but you can. Okay, now the vertical side text. So let's look at this. We've got our left side and our right side. They're both the same. They're just in different orientations or directions. So first off, within the subfolder, you've got your left side text. So over here it says 2025 Trojan football. Double click, you can type in whatever you want it to say. I often would use alternating colors. So if that's something you want to do, you may already know how, but if you don't, double click on this T here to select everything. Now you can come over here and you'll see that you get a cursor that you can click and drag to just highlight the text that you want to change. And so let's say I want that black. I can pick black, and then I could come, and not that I would want to do the 2 and the 0, but you get the idea. That's how you can do that. And because this isn't something that's going to change or shouldn't be changing with every subject to image that you create, you're just doing it once and then using it for the rest. So not too bad. Below you'll see the accent square left. So if I turn that off, you can see 2 layers live inside this this subfolder. Again, there's a little bit of grunge on all of this, and that is in these layer masks. So if you don't want the grunge, you can turn it off. I hold down Shift and just click on the layer mask, and you see that it disables. And again, you can unlock, unlink, and move it around if you feel the need to. But within the subfolder here, we've got a shape layer, which is this square. To change the color, it's the color overlay. So again, it's the same thing. And then you can copy the code so that you can come down to this other folder and paste it in so that they both match. And then you've got your letter. Now, you can just make this the letter for the school or the team. You can change the color, you know, to whatever. Let's see. That did not change. Let me try that again. There we go. So you can do any color combinations that you want. Something that I think is kind of cool, which I'll show you. On the original I did it, I used their logo, and so this is their actual logo here at the bottom, but I also used it again in these squares. So if you have a nice logo that's not too detailed because it's going to be super small, you might be a nice little touch that you can add, you know, to put it in these little squares here. Just an idea. Otherwise, you can stick with the text letter option that's built in. So that's how you would customize it. And so what you could do is when you select a color, you can have both of these open and you can just apply it to both of them, copy the code and paste it. This little vertical grunge line, actually let's jump up here. I'm going to turn it off. You can see it's this right here. So I didn't put it with the other grunge because I felt like occasionally it needed a contrasting color. Just to demonstrate, you can see here most of these grunge is like a dark gray black, but then you've got this little contrast of white. Same thing here, you got blue and red, you got navy and white, you've got gold and black. I just thought it looked better to be able to create a color contrast, and so that's why it's separate. You can keep it the same color as everything else, or you can, you know, if it's a color with, or excuse me, a team with 3 colors, instead of this is just white and blue and that's it, then that's a scenario where you might want to do that. And that's it. So once you get those customized, you can wrap that up. Next we have a paper texture overlay. If I zoom in down here, if I turn it off, you can kind of see what it does. It's just a little paper texture, a little extra grunge. Here's a big one. We've got subject frame layer. So if I turn that off, you can see a lot happens, a lot changes. So let's open it up. I've got it basically into, I guess, what is it, 5 layers here. At the very bottom, we've got our actual shape. So if I turn that off, it's basically this frame. I've got this layer mask where I masked out some grunge on the edges. And if you turn that off, you can see you can get a solid, clean shape. So maybe that's a look that you like for the job that you're working on, but that's up to you. There is a drop shadow. You can double click on that and you can play around with these values if you want to make it darker. So if you have a darker background, you may not see it as well. You can make it, you know, bigger. Whatever looks good for the colors that you've selected. But my suggestion is when you come in here, you already have your subject in here. My suggestion is to go ahead and turn off these first two layers because they can become a little distracting. The color is set up. Let me turn off the subject too. In fact, I'm going to turn off this layer as well. So basically all we have is our shape layer, and we have this gradient that's clipped to the shape layer. And so this gradient is dark blue to a lighter blue. And if you double click on it, you'll get this window. You can click on the icon there to get your gradient editor. Now, if you're like me, you've got too many saved already. So if you have one that works or will give you a good starting point, you can select it. You know, that's one that I used. But basically, what you want is a darker color around the edge, and you want a brighter color in the middle. So this left anchor here represents the outer color. So if you click on that left anchor and then click on this box here, you'll get your color picker again. You can see I can go a lot darker. I can do the opposite, which does not look good, but that's how you change the color for the outer area. The inner area is on the right hand side. So if you click on this little anchor here, click on your icon, your color icon, get your picker back up. This is where you can fine tune it. I will say that I have some smoke and fog layers. If you want them to show up and be detailed, you probably don't want to get too bright with this. And so this is one that I used. You can see this is orange. So just for example, I used that on this, and you can see the fog layers because I didn't let the background get too bright. So that's how you change the base color. This is a spotlight effect, which is basically just a soft white brush set to overlay. And so you can turn this on, and you can even click on an anchor point and move it around if you need to. You can scale it, oops, not stretch it, but you can scale it larger or smaller. You can reduce the opacity if you feel like it's too much. You can fine tune that. But the next two layers are where the fog comes from. And so I'm going to turn it on, and this is why I said to turn them off, because it's not the right color more than likely, and it's just going to be distracting. So here is like a bigger, less prominent fog or smoke, and so you want to get an orange color that is, let's see if there's a clean spot to sample from, that's lighter so that it shows up. Now the lighter I go, the more it's going to show up, and you can start to see it up here. And I want a little more saturated. The next one, I'm going to turn it on. It's a little bit more detailed, smaller, defined, and it's the same thing. I'm going to try to find a clean spot to sample from, and you can play around with it. You go white, you'll get a lot of contrast, but it looks a little less vivid, a little more washed out. If you stay on the saturated side, it may not show up as well or as much. So just kind of play around with it. You may decide you want to turn that off. You may want to reduce the opacity of it. You may want to go back after you've done all this, go back, and maybe you decided you want to see what this looks like if you make it just a little bit darker, if that smoke and that fog starts to show up a little bit more. Find the sweet spot. But that's what I did. I keep going back to them, but that's what I did on all of these. So you get the idea. And that's pretty much it for those layers. I don't like the way that looks, so I want to get it back. Of course, we have our subject image folder just above it. So let me explain how this is set up. The subject image folder has a layer mask on it by default, which is basically lines up with this bottom edge. And that's to make sure nothing shows below that edge. However, I wanted a second layer mask, which kind of fades out the lower area, kind of makes it look like the fog and the atmosphere is kind of coming in front of them a little bit. And so that's why I have another subfolder for your subject image, and this one has a soft gradient mask. So if I turn that off, you can see you get that hard edge. It doesn't look as good, I don't think. So I'm going to turn that back on. If you need to adjust this gradient mask, it's not hard. Make sure you don't do the top one. Do the subfolder. Select the layer mask itself. Go to your gradient tool. Come up to your gradient picker. Make sure you have black to white or white to black. And all you have to do is click where you want it to start. I have it set to radial for some reason. Come up here. Make sure it's on linear. And you can click and drag up. Hold down Shift to keep it straight. And if you want, you can come down and grab the bottom one, bring it up, bring it further down. It's that simple. And if you move on and you work on something else, you can come back to this layer mask and you can fine tune it even more. So very simple. That's how that works. See if we can get it back the way that it was, maybe something like that. So that's why I have 2 folders and 2 masks. Inside it, we have our subject image itself. Now, I went ahead and left this layer. I did not merge it. Just so you can see, I painted the edge light, this colored edge light on here. I'm going to do my best to explain this. It's not too complicated. It just takes a little bit of practice. So I'm going to turn it off and you can see what it looks like. It doesn't look bad, but you know, actually if I turn off this color grading option, you've got a really warm image with a really cool background. It doesn't look bad, but it could look a lot better. Well, how could it look better? I want to tie it into its environment. And I really didn't do it on many of the sample images. A lot of them really did need it. I did a little orange on him, nothing here. A little bit of yellow there. A lot of these I did not do it. I just felt like on the original images that it would look good if I were to paint these on. And so basically the way that I do it, I went ahead and put this layer up here. It's turned off, but basically it's blank. But this is using something called Blend If. I'm not going to give you a full breakdown or tutorial on Blend If. In fact, I'm not sure I could even do it correctly or properly. I would probably tell you something wrong. But basically, if you double click on the layer to get your layer style panel and on the blending options, you'll come down here and you notice that I've got these anchors split and I've got them, so I say split. Let me go back. And so what this does, if I hold down, what is it, Alter option, you can click on one and you can split it. Same thing with the highlights here. So we got our lights and our darks, and it basically just controls. You can see in the hair, it's a lot more just blanketed and heavy, and this, by spreading them out, it just allows a little more of a gradual transition. Now, I have a dummy layer in here, so I'm going to turn this off. This layer up here, if you turn it on, I'm going to hold down Alter option, just click and drag it down above your subject if you want to try it. Make sure that it's clipped. You can do create clipping mask, and it's already clipped, but right click, create clipping mask, or you can just hover right above it and let it clip in. But now all you would want to do is get your brush tool. I'm already at 20 and 20. This is the values that I like with my opacity and my flow, 20 and 20. Click on your color picker and you can sample a color. I'm going to come up here so it's the most vivid and saturated, and use your bracket key right to make it bigger, bracket key left to make it smaller. But really all I'm doing is I'm just starting to brush it in. And if you go with the higher opacity and higher flow, you can do this a lot faster. But I like to do it this way. And basically what I'm looking for is pretending you have colored gel light. So anywhere this edge light is hitting, This main light, it's going to be more washed out on the left. You'll get a little bit over here. You can try to paint some of that in there. Paint some in here where these edge lights are coming. But if I turn this one off and go back to the original, you can kind of see what I was able to do here. So that may not be for everybody, but I did it. It looks good. It makes this image look good. You might put your image in there without this effect on it and wonder why it doesn't look as good. So I just wanted to try to explain how I achieved that. Now, this isn't a one-size-fits-all, but I experimented with inner glow, and it might work in some cases. So on this subject folder, you'll see this inner glow. If I turn it on, you know, that's just inner glow, and it kind of helps, you know, add some blue to the edge. So you would just double-click inner glow, and then you would, you know, if you got orange, you got red. Now that looks very bold because you have a color contrast, but if you had an orange background, it may not look as bold. But once you pick your color, you can play around with the opacity. If it's too bold, just reduce the opacity, or if it's not showing up enough, you can increase the opacity, but you can get carried away, so just be careful. And the size, I think, is maxed out, so you could reduce it a little bit if you wanted to. Now, I felt like linear light looked best, but you can also play with blend modes and see if there's something that you think looks better for the color that you picked. But that might be a little hack, a little cheat that you can use. But anyways, I figured I'd better explain that. So just always duplicate this layer if you're going to use it, drag it down, clip it to your subject. And, you know, if you're doing just a few banners for some seniors or something, it might be a nice touch. If you're doing 100 plus kids, I'm sure you won't want to do that. You might use this inner glow option, or you might opt to just not do either. But hopefully that all makes sense. Let's see, we've got the next thing here is our color grading, which is optional, which I had turned off. So this is something, if you're familiar with my templates, you'll see this a lot. You're probably already familiar with what this is. It is optional, so you can turn it off. But basically, you'll notice it's kind of blue, which is the background color. It is a color overlay. It's set to soft light, and as far as the blend mode. And then the opacity is down at 15%. So you can increase the opacity to get more and more of the effect. It gets a little too much pretty quick, so you want to be careful. If you have a red background, then you would double click this and find you something more in the orange to red. You know, it just has to look good. Now, sometimes you'll have the opacity down at just as little as 5%. Sometimes you'll go up into 50%. But a few that I did heavy red here. I did some orangish yellow on him. Did some orange on him, some red on him. The one that I really did heavy was this guy right here. I did real heavy on the red to help blend him in. So it just depends on, you know, the color scheme that you're working with and how your subjects are lit and their uniforms as to how much you want to apply, if any at all. But that is optional, and I think it kind of helps tie them in a little bit. Let's see, moving right along, we're getting there. Center badge. So this says Windthorst, Texas. If you don't want it, you can just turn it off. But I keep jumping back and forth. Here you see that I decided to use it for his first name, so that's an option. This one you can see I put Burnett TX or Texas, and I put it off on the side. Here, WFTX. Up here, you got Go Mavs. You can move it around. You can scale it up, scale it down. You can have it say whatever you want. You can put it wherever you want if you want to use it. This one just says Ball, Dog Pride. You get the idea. So it's just a little accent badge that you can use. It's labeled as center badge because it's centered, but again, you can move it around. It has a drop shadow that can be adjusted by clicking on the word drop shadow and using those sliders. We won't get too deep into that, but if you open it up, you can see the layers that you're working with. So this is a shape layer, which is the actual plate or badge, I guess you would call it. So if I zoom in and I select this layer with the move tool, I can click and drag in on the sides to make it taller, shorter, narrower, wider. So depending on what you put in there, you can adjust the size of it. The grunge is from this layer mask, so if I hold down shift and click on the layer mask, the grunge goes away on the plate or the badge itself. There is separate grunge on the text layer, so the same thing. I can make it look nice and clean if I want to by holding down shift and clicking on these layer masks to disable them. But very simple. Let's see, you just type over what you want and change the color the same way as everything else. Very simple, very easy. That's all that there is to that. All right, last thing, if we go back, the last thing that we have here is our lower secondary subject. So I'm going to turn it on, and you see this is how you create a double image by using this folder. I just have a folder here already that has the optional color grade, which you may or may not want to use it on this bottom image. I did not use it on the sample image for this particular one, although some of the other ones I did. But basically you would drop your subjects in here. I decided to leave a few layers in here just so you can kind of see how I did this. I said it wasn't too difficult, but basically what we have is, and I have them as smart objects, I'll turn off. It's basically a soft round brush that I scrunched down, stretched out. I dropped the opacity to 30%. I've got a couple of them, so you can click on each and move them around. But if you duplicate these, right click, duplicate layer, or holding down Option or Alt if you're on PC, Option on Mac. If you hold that down and click and drag up, you can duplicate it that way. So it's reusable is the whole point. And so they make nice little soft ground shadows, but it still doesn't look quite right. So I left my hand painted layer in here that I did kind of quickly with a soft round brush. You can kind of see it. I'll turn it off. But really all that I did was take a soft round brush, put it on black. I have it at 20% and 20%. And I use my bracket key and we'll turn it off. We'll just create a new one. And I just come in here and start painting in some contact shadows. And I'm working on something that will make shadows a little bit easier. But anyways, you don't have to get too perfect with it. You just got to sell it. Something like that. And this is one of the rare situations I might use an eraser tool. Again, I have the opacity and flow down at like 30 because it allows me to just blend it a little bit. I just did that real quick. I might be a little more thorough in real life, but just for a demonstration purpose. So if you want to make a double image, don't be too intimidated. It does take a little bit of time, but man, I think the impact of having that extra image there, full body with ground shadows, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I think it's worth it. So that's it. We've zipped through that. I say zip through that. It's probably been an hour, but that's the norm. Let's talk about this horizontal team version real quick. Everything else is exactly the same, and you're probably already familiar with this, but basically if you open this subject image folder, you have some subfolders, and so they're basically labeled row 1, row 2, row 3. Well, you may only want one row. You may want 2 rows. You may want 3 rows. Really, it's up to you. This is just a nice starting point, and it's got some sample images in each of these that you can see. You can turn on and you can turn off. So if you only want 2 rows, you can turn off row 3. If you want an extra row, then you can easily right click and duplicate layer or duplicate group. We'll call it row 4 and move it in place. Try to at least. Right there. Okay. Now, if it'll let me. Select. I've got all of these masks unlocked, so we'll lock them up. And let's see if it'll let me. Here we go. You can click and drag up. And that's pretty much it. You just scale everything, position everything how you want it. You can duplicate rows, you can turn rows off, and more than likely you're going to need to adjust these layer masks. So just like we talked about on the individual, just select the layer mask, go to your gradient tool, make sure you're on linear, make sure you're on black to white, and let's see, I'm working with row 1, so I can click, hold down shift and drag up, drag down, fine tune. So get your rows built, get them in there, and then you can adjust these gradient masks to work for what you have in there. So that's what I wanted to touch on with the team file. One thing with the memory mate, pretty simple if you're familiar with the memory mates already. But I have a folder here for it says, let's see, I'm looking for this one, insert 5x4 team image here. So I'm going to open it up. We've got our sample team image. Turn it off, it goes away, you get the idea. So the idea is to use the 5x4 horizontal image to build your team image first. And once you have that saved, if I come over here, you see I have the sample one. You can click, drag, drop. Because I had this layer selected, it went right above it. We'll turn that off. Now with your team image selected in the move tool, it should make it a smart object automatically, but I'm going to click on an anchor point. I'm going to hold down Option or Alt and Shift, scale it down, move it. You get the idea. You make it as big as you want, position it how you want. Pretty simple. The other option, if you want it to be exactly like this one is to just double click on the sample image. It's a smart object, it'll open up. And so again, we'll do the same thing. Click, drag, drop, hit the check mark. Now, if you try to close this and hit save, it might work. Okay, it did. But if it gives you a save dialog box that comes up and it doesn't want to let you save it, all you have to do is hold down shift and click the layer below so that they're both highlighted. Right click, merge layers. Now if you hit the X and hit save, it should let you save. I need to learn what causes it to happen, but I run into a lot, and when I do, I just merge the layers so that it'll let me save it and go back. And if you do it that way, it'll be exactly like I have it in there. And that's it. Another long one, but hopefully you learned something that will help you make a better image. And I hope you guys like this one. It is about to be August 2025, so it's about to hit the fan and get crazy. Hope it helps you out. I've got to move on to the next one. So until then, thank you for watching. We'll see you.